The execution of Anne Boleyn, second wife of King Henry VIII, is a story steeped in tragedy, politics, and relentless ambition. Her downfall in May 1536 remains one of the most dramatic episodes of Tudor England. The seeds of Anne's demise were planted early that year, shortly after she miscarried a male child. Rumours began to swirl around the court, suggesting infidelity on Anne's part. Allegations that, if proven, amounted to treason against the king. On the 2nd of May, 1536, Anne was arrested in a sudden and shocking manner while attending a tennis match at Greenwich Palace. Henry VIII's attitude towards Anne had soured, leaving her isolated and deeply vulnerable. She scarcely had time to process her husband's abrupt departure before being confronted with serious charges of adultery, incest, and treason. Her arrest was a spectacle for those at the palace, and the humiliation was compounded when she was taken by barge in plain sight of London's curious populace. As Anne was brought along the Thames to the imposing Tower of London, the tower's cannons fired in a grim, terrifying salute to her fall from grace. Upon arrival at the tower, Anne was not dragged into a grim cell, but rather ushered into the very royal apartments she had resided in during happier times when awaiting her coronation. These luxurious rooms now served as a poignant reminder of her vanished power and status. The ladies-in-waiting who attended Anne during her imprisonment were no comfort to her. They were purposefully chosen by Thomas Cromwell for their disdain towards Anne and encouraged to relay her every word to the king. They were none too friendly, adding to the atmosphere of mistrust and betrayal. Throughout her imprisonment, Anne held on to her innocence resolutely, oscillating between moments of stoic composure and abject despair. She would write to Henry pleading, but Cromwell made sure Henry never saw or heard from Anne again. Anne Boleyn's trial, held on May 15, 1536, was one of the most dramatic and politically charged events in Tudor England. It took place before a court of peers presided over by her uncle, Thomas Howard, Duke of Norfolk. The jury also included her former friend and betrothed, Henry Percy. Anne was accused of adultery with multiple men, including her brother, George Boleyn, Lord Rochford, incest with her brother, high treason for allegedly plotting the king's death and conspiring with her supposed lovers. Witchcraft and conspiracy were also incited. These accusations were based on extremely weak and likely fabricated evidence gathered by Thomas Cromwell, Henry VIII's chief minister, who wanted her removed, as well as Henry, so Henry could marry Jane Seymour. Henry had grown tired of Anne. Their passionate fights were well known. Anne was deeply into politics, intelligent, witty, and ambitious. Anne and Henry shared a meeting of minds for the years before marriage. But now Henry was getting deeply paranoid, tyrannical, and desperate for a male heir. Anne had suffered multiple miscarriages and only had one surviving daughter, the later known Elizabeth I. Henry's passion fled. Her strong will and sharp tongue, once attractive to him, became irritants. Henry had fallen in love with Jane Seymour, one of Anne's ladies-in-waiting, who appeared modest and obedient, everything Anne was not. Henry wanted to free himself and decided the only way to do it was to remove Anne entirely, leaving Thomas Cromwell to do his bidding. The trial took place in the King's Hall within the Tower of London before about 26 peers of the realm, all men and nearly all politically aligned with Henry. Anne bravely had no legal counsel and defended herself. Anne denied every charge clearly and eloquently, eyewitnesses describing her as composed and dignified. She insisted she had been a faithful wife and said that if her only crime was that the king no longer loved her, she accepted her fate but had not betrayed him. Despite her strong defense, the outcome was preordained. The jury, who owed their loyalty to the king, found her guilty of all charges. Sentenced to be either burned at the stake or beheaded at the king's pleasure. Henry later commuted to beheading by a sword, considered a merciful move. Thomas Boleyn was forced to serve on the commission that tried the 4 men accused of adultery with his daughter. George Boleyn, Anne's brother, and the other men accused alongside her met their end on Tower Hill on the 17th May, 1536. To ensure a swift execution, Henry commissioned a French swordsman, a concession that demonstrated the extraordinary nature of this event. In fact, Henry sent to Calais for the swordsman before Anne's trial even took place. The outcome was never in question. The execution was originally scheduled for 18th of May 1536, but it was postponed at the last minute. On the day of the 18th, Anne rose early, reportedly calm and resigned to her fate. She prayed with her ladies and confessed her innocence in both her marriage and the charges against her. Anne's ladies then dressed and prepared her for the execution to come. Standing ready and waiting, having braced herself, Anne was then told by Sir William Kingston, the Constable of the Tower, that it would not in fact be today, but tomorrow, as the swordsman had not arrived due to travel delays. On the 19th of May 1536, Anne's fate met a chilling conclusion. Anne met her end with grace, delivering a poised speech shorn of resentment towards the king. With a single, swift stroke of the sword, Anne Boleyn's tumultuous reign was severed, ushering in a profound shift in the Tudor dynasty. The execution was intended to be a relatively private affair, staged within the confines of the Tower of London's Tower Green, in contrast to the public execution sites outside. The gates to the tower were, however, left open, and a crowd of around 1,000 to several thousand people gathered. After the execution, no arrangements were made for Anne's coffin. She had to be laid into a small, narrow wooden arrow chest by her ladies, who would not let any man touch any part of Anne. By this time, they had turned to care for Anne and felt deep sorrow. Anne was finally laid to rest in an unmarked grave in the Chapel Royal of St. Peter ad Vincula at the Tower of London. Henry had finely tuned and masterminded every single point from Anne's arrest to execution. Anne's story echoed through history, marking not just the tragedy of a fallen queen, but the ruthless machinations of a court where power was won and lost in the blink of an eye. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe for more royal history at your fingertips.